Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're back in Brussels here for the men's 1500 meter Diamond League final. And we're getting ready to take off here. The Pacers are going to lead the way through the first 800 meters until they drop out of the race and let these men battle it out for the Diamond League title. These men are very impressive. They're all at the top of the game right now. Notice how these men have very little body fat to them. It helps them be a little faster than most people. Let's break this concept down. Newton's second law states that the acceleration of an object is directly proportional to the magnitude of the net force on the object, in the same direction as the net force, and inversely proportional to the mass of the object. This means that the net force equals the mass times the acceleration. So imagine we have two runners, one being Timothy Cheruiyot, who is currently in black and leading the pack just behind the Pacers, compared to someone who's the average weight of an American male, which is roughly 200 pounds. They both decided to run one lap around the track with a net force of 100 newtons. Since Cheruiyot's mass is less, his acceleration will be greater than the 200-pound man. Lots of physics are happening during this race right now. Newton's third law is in action every time these men's feet strike the ground. Newton's third law states that whenever one body exerts a force on a second body, the second body exerts an oppositely directed force of equal magnitude on the first body. During this race, these runners' feet will strike the ground during every stride. What many viewers don't realize is that the ground is hitting the runners' feet just as hard as their feet are hitting the ground. These runners are also battling some very tough conditions right now. At this specific instant, they have a multitude of forces acting against them. The force of gravity is pulling them down, while their normal force is counteracting this. Their applied force forwards is met with air resistance, which slows them down. The applied force, for the most part, is constant until they change pace. Friction forces also act against the runners every time their foot strikes the ground. We're going to take a quick break here, folks, and tune back in towards the end of the race. And we're back in Brussels for the men's 1500 meter Diamond League final. They're going into the final lap now. The track here in Brussels is truly amazing. It is a special surface that has a lot of friction, which allows runners to not slip during their strides. Many people overlook the importance of the friction during these high caliber races. All of these runners are wearing what we call racing spikes. The racing spikes have textured surfaces on the bottom along with metal spikes. The surface and spikes help the runner dig his foot into the ground. While this may seem like it would slow the runner down, it actually helps them to push off the surface of the track, which propels them forward and adds more force to their strides. Newton's first law also comes into play during this race. Notice how none of these runners are trying to pass one another when going around the curves. This is because it requires more energy to pass someone on a curve than it does on a straightaway. The reason behind this is inertia. Newton's first law states that an object at rest tends to stay at rest, and an object in motion tends to stay in motion with the same speed and direction unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. When going around the curves, the runners will get as close to the inside of the track as possible. Inertia wants to pull them to the outside of the track, but once they hit the straightaway, these runners will go nuts trying to pass one another because all the inertia is directed forwards. And they're racing down the home stretch. Timothy Cheruiyot takes the men's 1500 meter Diamond League title with a time of 3 minutes 30.22 seconds. What an amazing race, folks. Thanks for tuning in to this physics-filled event.